The talker will be steering the panel on reparations. Reparations has been in the news for many, many years. It is something that has been around from the time of Marcus Mosiah Garvey started to talk about back to Africa. It has been on the agenda across all international bodies, and it is not a topic whereby we should think it has no relevance to us. Though we continue to struggle and though we continue to ask for the reparations consideration to be placed in the right context, as well as to be given the due overdue diligence of what is required for our nation, the struggle continues. So Brother Taka and his esteemed panel this afternoon will be looking at the issue of reparations from its historical standpoint, as well as the current and up-to-date issues around why is it necessary, why is it overdue, and what also is this whole important matter which it's long being discussed. Brother Taka, welcome, as well as your esteemed panel.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Washi. Greetings. Can everybody hear me loud and clear? Oh, good, good, good. That's great. So, Brother Washi, I'll quiet the studio for a bit and then we'll get started. Yes, I'd like to say to everybody on behalf of the Congress movement on this second day of ALD. Now, the topic we're looking at today is reparations. As you know, very thorny area because we have views, many approaches, and to some of the organizations here, individuals here today, I'm sure they will have very forthright views on how they see reparations. Now, what I like to do before when we start, just to say, just to keep the noise down, when you're not speaking, could you keep your muted, please? So if you offer that rule, I think the session will go very, very nice. Now, I'd like to get straight into the proceeding on reparations. Turn. So if you could take 3 minutes, 4 minutes maximum to make your point. And when I do come to you, before you get into the subjects, could you say something about yourself? And if you do belong to an organization, could you say what that organization is and approach to reparations as well in a summary, and then we'll go into the topic itself. So first, I'd like to start off by there's a question I'd like to put, and the question is, what is reparations to you in the context of the transatlantic slave trade? And again, we are honored by with us yesterday, also Bello, who was also with us yesterday on the economics debate. So I will start again with Baba Obati Shaka. So for the next minutes or so, Baba Shaka, could you just say what is reparation means to you in terms of transatlantic slave trade?
Yeah, first, it's good to be with Pan-African Congress movement, and it was good to share some ideas yesterday on economics and today on reparations, and to see a few of my favorite people, including Sister Favia Kujichagulia and her beautiful daughter, almost identical twins in more than one respect. as well as Brother Pepper, who I saw a minute ago, who I probably wouldn't be married to my current wife had it not been for him arranging the place where I stayed. So, you know, that's what you call real good friendship there, Pepper Guy, and to all the others. Reparations for me is, first of all, I want to preface this by saying there's nothing that can be done with reparations that can address the horror, the savagery, the barbarism, and the murder, enslavement, and all the other attacks on my people. So there's no amount of money, there's no amount of restoration. I'm not a part of the I'm sorry generation. I don't accept apologies. I'm a warrior. If you've done wrong, you're going to get your butt kicked. That's the reparations. So, but for me, reparations is repair. It's never sufficient for the loss, psychological loss. Um, One of the psychological losses in enslavement has been historical amnesia, which occurs also through colonialism. And that is the tendency of the oppressed to want to imitate their oppressor, and as a result to be convinced by their miseducation that their history was worthless because they get a very worthless portrayal of it, unless it's coming from conscious African people. So that psychological damage is serious. And so it's repair, but never sufficient. And so for me, it's the repair from the damage done in many different areas that we'll explore today. And I think that in Cobra is to be commended for being the leading group in the United States on reparations. And there have been pretenders that have come along that have really been cutouts of the right wing and have opposed Black immigration and used that as their calling card for reparations, and then fooled a lot of African people around the world, including in the Caribbean and the United States, and some followers who are misled and unintentionally misled and view reparations as a check, you know. So it's much more than that. So for me, it's repair for the damage done, never adequate, never sufficient. I think the best repair will be when we restructure this country when it comes to the United States and Africans achieve full power and freedom all over the world. But in the areas of health, wealth, miseducation, mass incarceration, these are areas that reparations needs to deal with. And any lingering feelings of dependence. So the one thing I would say is Africans have always been addressing this, and the basic repair we did was by creating a new African culture, and that pulled us together, and that's why Greenwood and places like that were built. So that's a debrief. And by the way, my affiliations is I'm a co-founder with National Black United Front, and that organization took some strong stands on reparations. I'm chair of the Pan African People's Organization and a long time fighter for African liberation.
Okay, Santisana, Brother Obati, on that. Now I'd like to come to Professor Chakalia and the same question. In terms of reparation, what does it mean to you in the context of the transatlantic trade?
Unmute.
Are you muted? Let me see. Okay.
Okay, you're on mute
Okay,
now.
you're unmuted now.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me with all these esteemed, honored guests and our warrior revolutionaries out there looking in. This is African Liberation Day, and of course, I'm a member of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, and which had African Liberation Day, which held it last weekend. And I also work with the Organizational Black Unity in San Antonio, Texas. Educator, author, spoken word musician. Basically, exactly what our dear brother, Dr. Obatasaka said. There is no amount of anything that would fix what has been done to us. And I like to rephrase things in terms of a language that is more.
Oh, I think she's look like she's dropped off. Okay, I think the can is gone for until she gets back in. Okay, in that case, I'd just like to tell Glenroy Watson, same question. In terms of reparation, what does it mean to you? And when I say you, also organization you're in, because I know you're very active within an organization in terms of the transatlantic slave trade. Okay, you're on mute now.
Yes, hope you can hear me. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, it's
Is it-
the volume's a bit low.
How about that? Is that better?
Well, we'll have to manage. Yeah, if we can hear.
All right. I'll try and raise my voice a little bit more. Yes, greetings, everyone. Greetings, family. The first thing is I'm not sure I recognize the term trade in relation to the brutality, murder, and rape of our people. So there was no trade. There was capture of Africans and stolen. Um, in the context of reparation, first thing I think that people need to come to terms with is it will not be achieved by wishful thinking. It's a matter that require confronting the enemy and knowing who the enemy is. Uh, I'm a member of the Global African Congress. The Global African Congress was born in Barbados in 2002 after the World Conference Against Racism, where many of us attended and succeeded in changing the narrative of the global community, who tried to prevent even the discussion of the issue of African enslavement and colonialism. That victory led us to organize the Global African Congress in Barbados in 2002. Remember that this was in the face of so-called September the 11th, where the global community were expected to put away everything else and join the US, the biggest bunch of terrorists, to fight terrorism. It seems rather absurd now in reflection that that could be made as a request. If we do not understand that it will take more than just wishful thinking, it will take us a long time. As the song earlier on says, we need a generation willing to fight, not ask, but fight, recognize that they are entitled to reparation. So for me, we need a change in our language. We need a change in the narrative that seeks to put things in context that European have tried to paint it, that there was some sort of trade between our people. There was not. We were being brutalized, murdered. Our society on the continent was being destroyed. When you rape and pillage a nation and take away their doctors, their nurses, their farmers, etc., their builders, you are trying to destroy that nation. Our survival is a success and an indication of our ability to fight. We must continue that fight and demand, as we have said, the very first person was put on a ship or on a camel and dragged across the desert, reparation has been due. But we must know and commit ourselves that this is a fight for reparation. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, asante, Brother Glenroy. Again, some dropped out. Okay, next I'll go to Brother Jelani. And Brother Jelani, the same point. Reparations, meaning to you and your organization, because of what happened during those dark years of the slave decade.
Greetings. Greetings to this distinguished panel. I greet you all and the listeners and the viewership in the honorable spirit of our great and mighty African ancestors. It is indeed a privilege and an honor to be among this distinguished panel today. These panelists are extreme heavyweight and people I honor and respect in this struggle. To address the issue of reparation, I am a member of the African Emancipation Day Reparation March Committee, and we have a framework on what we define as reparation. And we adopt like the Chenwizu definition, which means that reparations include repairing of all types: the mental repair, the cultural repair, the spiritual repair, the family repair, institutional repairs, and economic and political repair that's necessary to building back our society. So that is how we view reparation, and also we also embrace the United Nations definition of reparation as a right to a remedy, which is the 5 pillars of reparation. Excuse me, which include compensation, rehabilitation, satisfaction, guarantee of non-repetition. You know, that international framework, we embrace that as well. So that's how we struggle, and that's how we move towards attaining reparation. I'd like to also echo what the great elder had said about Tishaka, about it's all about repairing as well, and also what Elder Glenroy has said, that we have to get our language right. For instance, the transatlantic trafficking in enslaved African is how we would phrase that episode that took place across the Atlantic. And we never refer to our ancestors in any derogatory terms, but we also fight to bring back their humanity and their dignity every day. So that's for us. Just for me, reparation is a constant job, a process of repairing oneself, repairing one's family, and repairing the African personality, the African sovereignty has been lost around the world. And that's me as an introduction.
Okay, son, Brother Jabulani, for that. Now I'd like to turn to... Okay. Yes, now I'd like to turn to Sister Chakalia. I know your mom's still trying to get back on. But in the meanwhile, yeah, I'll just ask you the same question. What is reparation to you in terms of your organization? Because I know you're a member of ENCOP, United States, in terms of what's happened to us during what is a transatlantic trade.
You're muted. Unmute.
Okay, I'll try and...
Still can't hear. What's going on?
You're muted. Muted, but there's no volume coming through.
Can you still not hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
that was strange. All right. So I apologize for that. My name is Taiwo Kuji Chabulia Seitu. I'm a member of the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. Here in the United States, I am the female co-chair of the Education Commission and former female co-chair of the National Congress of Economic Development Commissioners. And Incobra's stance on reparations is full repair. We also look at the international definition of reparations in regard to it being full repair and the guarantee of non-repeat, which I think for the United States would be the most difficult thing to achieve. But in terms of reparations on the whole, we hold 5 injury areas with regard to how African people were impacted on these shores. And those injury areas include peoplehood and nationhood, which was addressed by the Provisional Government of the Republic of New Africa. Many of our founders were also PGRNA members. So peoplehood and nationhood is absolutely one of the injury areas, in that we have all these Africans now in the United States of America who we have American citizenship by default, not because it was a choice or even something that, you know, we experience full citizenship currently. The second injury area is education. The third injury area is health. We have numerous, I mean, we can't even count the health disparities that Africans, new Africans in this country face as a result of widespread racism in this country. The fourth injury area is criminal punishment. And we know that the prison industrial complex is huge in the United States of America, and that we see lots of people of African descent behind bars in a form of modern day slavery. And the fifth injury area is wealth and poverty, because people of African descent in this country face extreme rates of poverty at very high rates as a result of the loss of generational wealth as a direct result of racism and the repercussions of enslavement and everything else that has happened to African people on these shores. So incorporate these reparations as full repair, not just monetary payments, but it must take the form of something that addresses each of these injury areas, where African people can see repair in every area, psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, economically, in every aspect, everything that has negatively affected us as a result of the enslavement Holocaust and as a result of racism. We need to see full repair in every area. So a lot of people, just like some of the speakers have said before me, a lot of people kind of mislead other people in the discussion about reparations in terms of they just frame it in the context of monetary compensation. But we all know that there's no amount of money that can make up for the Holocaust that has happened to African people around the world, nor will any amount of money address full repair. So Incobra's stance is full repair in every aspect that has where African people have been damaged as a direct result of enslavement and the continuing racism after enslavement was legally somewhat eradicated in this country, somewhat, because we still see a form of enslavement in the prison industrial complex.
Okay, yes, Santana, Sister Kuchichakali. Now I'd like to turn to Brother Sabello. And the same thing to you. What does reparations mean? I know in your context it's going to be slightly different because you actually reside in the continent of Africa, and seems like everybody else is in the diaspora. So in terms of your approach, what does it do? And say, especially from a continental standpoint, how do continental African view reparations, view diaspora, for what happened to them during the transatlantic, the slave trade, as it is put?
Yeah, thank you very much, Brother Tahaka. The scenario as regards reparations definitely echo the points raised by Elder Glenroy and Brother Dulani as regards the use of the word trade necessarily, because one of the reasons why we started the School of African Awareness was the realization of the necessity for self-repair. We also very much follow the line of reasoning and definition advanced by Elder Chinwezu, where amongst the critical aspects of reparations is the self-repair, and necessarily self-repair also entails how we view ourselves and the relanguaging that speaks to us from a perspective that empowers us as a people. So when we look at the issue behind reparations on the continent, we look at it from a perspective that basically says our reparations as Africans has to be viewed from a perspective where there are three clear, maybe four clearly defined aspects to it. On the one hand is the Arab enslavement of our people, which necessarily depopulated most of the eastern part of the continent and crippled the ability of the continent to advance at its own pace and its own direction. And then we look at the enslavement of our ancestors in as far as the transatlantic trafficking is, because definitely that was human trafficking. There was no consent, they were just taken off the continent and made to work. So again, that speaks to a scenario where the most able-bodied young men and women who could have been productive in the development of the continent were taken away. So it kind of stifled the ability of Africa to again advance and progress and develop in a manner that is in keeping with the interests of the continent. And then, having gone through the experience where the human trafficking entailed taking our people off the continent, the enslavement comes now in the form of colonialism. And colonialism basically presents itself as enslavement on the continent without the necessity to transport us to other parts of the world. And unfortunately, it was interesting listening to Sister Taiwo just now talking about the continued enslavement in the United States. We are still under continued enslavement in as far as the neo-colonial experience that we are going through, because we are not yet at liberty to be the African people that we basically were created to be, in the sense that our spirituality is still enslaved, our culture is still enslaved, our resources are still enslaved, our land is still enslaved, our identities are still enslaved. We are still subjected to boundaries which were defined for us by someone else and their own interests. So we are basically the reparations drive necessarily entails the freeing of Africa as a whole. And as we say that, what we are also cognizant of when we talk about reparations, we are not confining ourselves to the so-called mother country, which is the colonizing country. They deliberately twisted it to call it a mother country, but it's not. They were the colonizers. We are also looking at these so-called international institutions and organizations like the United Nations, like the World Bank, like the IMF, because they are a continuation of the manner in which we are enslaved financially. So we need to free ourselves from that particular aspect. And in closing, I will say that also speaks to a scenario whereby as Elder Glenroy was saying, we need to fight for reparations as of right, not a request. We need to start making that these debts that we are supposedly owing, some of them, by the way, being owed by those same countries that colonized us, and now we have a responsibility to pay. They should all be written off, and we stop this relationship, which is proving to be exploitative to us as African people. Thank you very much.
Okay, Asante Sana, Brother Sibyl. Okay, Professor Chakali is back with us. Brilliant. So I'd like to go straight to you. The questions that we asked, I'll ask it again. Reparation, what does it mean to you in terms of what happened was and what referred to, I know it's quite derogatory to us in terms of transatlantic slave trade?
Hopefully this will work. Thank you again for having me on, and I'm so honored to be with all of these honored people, guests, historians, warriors. Again, Sister Avia Kuji Chagalia, and first and foremost, as an author writer, I always deal with language because language is something that enslaves us all the time. So I never use the word slave, and I don't say the word trade because there were human beings who were trafficked and enslaved. And the issue is bigger than the enslavement and the Holocaust that occurred during the Ma'afa. The big picture here started over 529 years ago. This oppression is three-dimensional because humans are three-dimensional. We are social, physical, and psychological realities. The physical exploitation, physical enslavement is no longer going on. However, the physical enslavement of all African lands is still going on. So our land is still being physically held. When we look at psychologically, we are all suffering from years of psychological exploitation and oppression. White psychopathy. I refuse to call psychopathy supreme. So I call it is white psychopathy. It is a mental disease. It is a mental disease that was created so that the myth of white supremacy, the myth of white superiority becomes the foundation of all areas of society. So when our economic reality, when our educational institutions, our entertainment system, family structures, legal system, labor policies, political practices, religious beliefs, scientific endeavors, and militaristic objectives are all based on white psychopathy, the myth of white supremacy. That is racism. That racism is ubiquitous. It crosses continental lines, it crosses psychological lines. So our oppression is three-dimensional. Therefore, any resolution, healing must be three-dimensional. It must be psychological, it must be physical. Physical land needs to be released from the hands of the enslavers, colonizers, and our solution must be social. 10 areas: economics, education, entertainment, family, labor, law, politics, religion, science, and war. And as warrior, scholar, Dr. Chashaka said, there's no amount of money that can do this. And let's be clear, money is artificial. It is not real. It's little pieces of paper with pictures and numbers on it. The value is all in our minds. You can't grow food with it, can't make clothes out of it, can't build property, houses out of it. It is artificial. Money is not a solution or an answer. Get off that boat. It is sinking quickly. And just to make it crystal clear, if we look at economics, when we look at the reality of money, there are approximately 200 countries on Earth, 200. The top 10 economically are, of course, the top 10 oppressors: England, US, France, Britain, Portugal, on and on. However, if you rank African American wealth as a country, African American wealth would rank 13th as a country on earth, meaning African Americans have more financial and monetary money in their possession than more than 120, 180 other countries on earth. That's a lot of money. But because we use money as a transfer payment, it comes to our hands and we give it right back to our oppressive culture and our oppressive state. We have nothing because we do not use our money for us. $2 trillion is what just African Americans have alone. But because we are not in touch with our minds, we're out of our minds, we're out of our Black minds, we do not use that for our own reparations. So nothing can fix what over 500 years of damage, psychological, spiritual, emotional, economic, educational, scientific, legal, political, on and on and on. Nothing will fix that. However, we do know that we must eradicate this myth of white supremacy. White psychopathy has got to be eliminated around the world. And all of us are here because of the genocide created from white psychopathy. So a lot of people would like to believe that enslavement's over, it doesn't matter anymore, okay, but the physical ownership, possession of our land is still going on. The psychological oppression is still going on. Genocide, Black people being slaughtered, killed, lynched, raped, constantly still going on. So I look at genocide because genocide is the big picture. It is the one thing we all have in common, no matter where we are on this planet. So here in the States, I work with, the All African People's Revolutionary Party, who had their African Liberation Day last week. I also work with the Organization of Black Unity out of San Antonio, Texas. And here with my family, we work on resolving racism and all of the wonderful educators and warriors here in the Bay Area. And it is not enough because until we get our minds Black, we will not be successful in resolving racism, eliminating white psychopathy. And that's what we need to look at, because white psychopathy is the foundation of every social area, of every spiritual endeavor, of our physical, psychological, and social oppression. So our oppression is three-dimensional. Genocide is three-dimensional. The solution must be three-dimensional: physical, psychological, spiritual, and social. It is bigger than money. Money is not the solution. It is not the answer. It is a tiny little bone that has been thrown to just a few people. We cannot get caught up on money. We must look at the entire reality: physical, social, psychological, all 10 areas of society, and how it impacts us all. And the key that unifies us, the key that will free us, is genocide. We are all looking at genocide, more so than it's
yeah, seems like hello. Yeah. Oh, it's just it's dropped out. Okay, some problem. Can everybody still hear me? Everybody? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate that we're having a bit of problem with the line. So, the Purple Kai, I'm coming to you now. So the same, in terms of reparation, what does it mean to you in terms of what's happened to us as a people? You know, millions of us was taken, Africa, plantations, and approach now to reparation. How do you see it?
First, let me say, greetings, family. And when I say family, this is not just polite language. It is real. My elder brother, the Shaka, and the panel, our relationship goes back over 45 unbroken years. And I've just seen Professor Jeffries, who joined the platform, And our relationship goes back over many, many years. So I'm very happy in this gathering. Let me begin by saying that the reparation movement provides us with the greatest opportunity for liberation if we make the right choice. There's two roads to reparation: monetary restoration and self-repair. My good sister, Sister Ulika made the point that money is not the issue. We have all the material that can be transformed into money. What is missing is our minds. And therefore, and I'm glad that we can make light work of this conversation, because the majority of us, in fact, all of us, are in one accord that self-repair is our focus. And what we need to look at is what is the recipe that we delivered. Because if we go down the monetary road and European say, okay, we're sorry of what we did, how much you want, and they dole it out to us. Who did go to? Governments. Those same idiots, madmen and a few women who occupy the seat of government, and all of it would go back to Europe with interest. So I'm not good on timing, but a talker can rein me in if I'm going out of time. But since a number of us are quoting from the document produced by Chinwesu, let me just quote a little bit to get us into focus. He began by saying, let me begin by noting that reparation is not just about money. It's not even mostly about money. In fact, money is not even 1% of what reparation is about. Reparation is mostly about making repairs, self-made repairs on ourselves, mental repairs, psychological repairs, cultural repairs, organization repairs, social repairs, institutional repairs, technological repairs, economic repairs, political repairs, education repairs, repairs of every type that we need to reinstate and substantiate Black societies. For the sad truth is that 5 centuries of Holocaust have made our society brittle and unviable. And as the great Marcus Garvey warned us over 50 years ago, if we continue as we are, heading for extinction. So what we need to understand, what is our mission? What is our purpose? And how do we begin? We have the great minds. Shaka alone is a walking library. So is Professor Jeffries. Shaka, in terms of a strategist, an activist, there's no equal of him alive. And Dr. Jeffries. So we're not lacking in knowledge. What we're lacking is an application. We must stop the nonsense. We must be ashamed of ourselves to allow this rubbish to continue for so long. Bring it to an end.
Okay, Asante Sana. Okay, I'm going to move on. I'd like to welcome Dr. Leonard Jeffries on today. Been a long time. I remember you Great African Liberation Day, many occasions back in the 90s and back in the early 2000s. Now, we've been asked a question in I think Elder Pekai, there's a feedback. I'm going to mute you because there's quite a bit of feedback coming through. Okay, that's better. We've been asking the question in terms of reparation, and we've been saying, what reparations mean to you in terms of what's happened to us in that Middle Passage when millions was taken out of Africa, as we know, deposited in the Americas, and we say the bedrock of the wealth of the West was blacks. How do you do reparations?
Well, certainly I want to be able to give thanks that the Creator has brought us this far, and all of you who have been a part of the serious movement of our people. I'm glad to see we're still on the battlefield, and we have to provide some leadership for those coming behind us. For myself, I'm at the 85th year. And so 85, and I'm still alive, ready to keep moving. And we've raised key points that we have to define who we are and what are our circumstances and what are we going to continue to contribute for our future. And I think we've hit the right themes, that it's not a question of how much money is going to be transferred or power, etc. It's defining who African people, who we are as a global family. And so that when we can provide that information and formulate it for our future generations, we're on our way. I was glad to hear our brother Pepper Kai referred to Chinwezu and others, because we need to deal with some of those who are long distance runners and who can really see the flow of our development over a period of years. So we need to redefine ourselves. Who are we? We need to redefine our circumstances. And it's not about money. It's about what is the program that we have for restoration of African peoples. And that means that we have to begin to look at serious work done by previous, those who went before us. I never go anywhere without carrying my armor and remembering those who have laid the foundation. So one of our key brothers, and he represents a family and schools of knowledge, Dr. John Henry Clark. And one of his last great works is Notes, Africans at the Crossroads. Clearly, we're at the crossroads of global history. And it continues as the title of the work, Notes for an African World Revolution, so that we cannot be afraid of the consciousness that allows us to see the need for revolutionary activities. So we don't have to run away from that understanding. We need to run to it and see those of us who've been on the cutting edge of revolutionary activities, what has been the positive and the negative in relationship to that. So Dr. Clark talks about Notes for an Unfinished Revolution. And so the first image that you see is Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. And the second image is Patrice Lumumba, the work that he had envisioned for the Congo. And then you have Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And next to Garvey, you have the child of the Garvey experience, El-Haj Malik El-Shabazz Malcolm X. And then next to him is the Kenyan experience, symbolized by Tom Mboya, but of course, Jomo Kenyatta. So this means that we really have to understand where we stand historically. We have to redefine who we are and what we intend to do with this knowledge of self. And so we have to systematically pass it on to the generations coming behind us. And so that we have to make sure that we step out and give acknowledgement to brothers who are redefining and continuing to redefine with their work who we are. And certainly the giant Cheikh Anta Diop, who I had the pleasure of meeting in 1959-60, where? In Paris. What was the occasion? It was the occasion of one of the most historic moments when Africans decided that they were going to support one of the greatest minds coming out of our struggles, the Cheikh Anta Diop. But he had not received his doctorate. In 1959-60, when Spirit told me to leave Switzerland, where I was studying, and go to Paris. And I said, I haven't lost anything in Paris. Why are you pushing me toward Paris? And when I finally got the message and it came so strong, I decided to catch the night train, go under Mont Blanc, arrive at Lyon in France, and then take the connecting train on to Paris. And I got there in time for the enormous struggle waged by Cheikh Anta Diop's mentor. Here's one of the greatest minds in human history, and he had mentors. He stands on the shoulders of others. And one of the most important of his mentors was Alioune Diop and Madame Diop. And they had formed an organization and structure right next to the Sorbonne, which is the university in Paris, and right on the street, the Rue des Écoles, the street of schools, where they have the Collège de France, where you have your undergraduate work. So right in the middle of this French-ized educational power, you had this black dot planted. And that black dot, the Presence Africaine think tank, the Presence Africaine publication house, the Presence Africaine strategy. Alioune and others said that we're going to bring 50 to 100 scholars of all types to be there to help support the defense of Cheikh Anta Diop. It's a magnificent story that should be known in our history, that these scholars, white, black, all kinds of dimensions, were there for this great defense of his dissertation. He had to do it 3 times before it finally went through. So we have to redo the historical processes that we've been able to transfer or pass on. And we have to look at them again. That Cheikh Anta Diop was also inspired by one of our brothers from the Caribbean. I used to call him Monsieur Cravat, Mr. Tie. He always wore a tie. Whenever I met him or saw him, he was wearing a tie. He used to call me Monsieur Leonard Diopian. In other words, because of my knowledge and relationship with Cheikh Anta Diop. But Senghor and others were part of this family. But Aimé Césaire brought in a special spirit for these greats that we have to pay homage to. And I'd like to just show you that the strategies and these families and this relationship involves us understanding who and what we really are and have to be. And so this great work, part of the schools of knowledge that Cheikh Anta Diop was able to contribute, inspired by Aimé Césaire and the others, he dedicated this work to the memory of Alioune Diop, his mentor. Most of us know about Cheikh Anta, but Alioune, we have little knowledge, who died on the battlefield of culture. He's not talking the battlefield of military prowess. He dedicated this book for a brother who died on the battlefield of culture. So culture is the key. So we have to redefine what we are about. We have to redefine how we're going to approach our culture. So that means we have to, as I have said often, we have to understand that it's a great struggle for the African mind. And that African mind, M-I-N-D, will allow us to control the African mind, M-I-N-E. Other people understood that, the Europeans, now the Asians have understood that mind, M-I-N-D, and the mind, M-I-N-E, go together. And the Chinese are moving around the world with power, trying to take the Chinese mind and deal with the mind, the resources of the world. So no one is sitting at somebody's step door with their hands out waiting for some money. There's action, there's consciousness that has to be a part of it. Alion, who died on the battlefield of African culture. Alion, you knew what you came to do on this earth. A life entirely dedicated to others, nothing for yourself, everything for others. A heart filled with goodness and generosity, a soul steeped in nobility, a spirit always serene, simplicity personified. Did the Demerge want to provide us with an example, an ideal of perfection by calling you into existence? Alas, the terrestrial community to which you knew how to convey better than anyone else the message of human truthfulness that sprang from the innermost depths of your being was deprived of you too soon. But the remembrance of you will never be erased from the memory of African peoples to whom you dedicated your life. That is why I'm dedicating this book to your memory in witness to a brotherly friendship that is stronger than time. And so we're dealing with a whole spiritual understanding of who and what we are and what we have to do and what we have to transmit to generations to come. And if this great scientist who stood before the world and gave us the victory in terms of the Nile Valley and early African cultures and whatnot, if he can continue to spread his word and we can pass it on to others who need to understand it, then we're making reparations. We're repairing the damage that has been done to the African mind, body, and spirit, to African history and African culture. We're repairing it. And the symbol of the connection between Shekata that gave us the beginning of human development and how it went to its highest levels in the Nile Valley, then he also put for us the understanding that we have to be about a renaissance, a deep cultural renaissance. And the perfect example of that renaissance is, again, coming out of Africa, speaking to the world. And this, my heart leaps when I appreciate the need for renaissance. I've been lucky I was able to be at the three great conferences. The first World Festival in 1966 with my beautiful wife, talented, wonderful wife, Dr. Rosalind. We were there in 66 for 30 days. We transferred our apartment in Abidjan. We traded an apartment with somebody in Dakar. So we were there for 30 days. When they were saying that two great minds are being honored, one is Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop, the other is Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois. In the first World Festival, when people like Wole Soyinka were doing their great things in the play, that Canvas Harvest that Wole Soyinka put out there, had to do with you can't have leadership that is responsible to the people. You can't have leadership that's selling out and not achieving what they should leave. So this is Cheikh Anta Diop's vision for the future, the rise of the African family. And this is the monument that we joined many people to help dedicate in Senegal. And it is on a quiet volcano. And so when we first went to Gorée to moan and groan about slavery, then we left Gorée and went back to Dakar mainland. And then we went to this enormous tribute to our genius. And it's the rise of the black man. And God knows the black man needs to rise. Get off of his knees, doing all kinds of things on his knees. You can't win a war on your knees, no matter who you're praying to, no matter how many crap shoots you are making, how much dope you're shooting in your vein. You got to be up on your feet, ready to tackle the world. And so that's the black man rising. And you can't do it by yourself. You have to do it with your female partner. And the black man is leaning on his rock the female. And you don't do it for yourselves. You do it for the future. And the black man is holding his child up to the future. And that child is not playing with the father. The child is not reaching back for some support. The child is pointing to the future. He's pointing not to Europe, where we usually look for sustenance. He's not pointing east to Mecca. He's not even pointing south to the rest of Africa. That child is pointing across the Atlantic Ocean at the closest point to the so-called New World, and that child is pointing to Africans in the diaspora. It is this link between the continental Africans all over the continent and the diasporian Africans that we have an obligation and a responsibility to make happen. We can't wait for others to do it. We have to pull it together ourselves. We're the key generation that has experiences. And the beauty of this monument is it is the tallest of its kind, taller than Jesus the Redeemer overlooking Rio. And I've been there several times, taller than the Statue of Liberty. And of course, being in New York, I've been there several times. This is one of the tallest monuments of its kind, but it speaks to the rise of our people collectively. The beauty of it is that you can go inside and you can take an elevator, as Brother Mario and I did when we were there with hundreds of others. We took the elevator 16 stories, 15 stories into the mind of the black man, and 30 or 40 people can be inside the mind looking out on the world. I did share that with Mario, and of course, he's inherited the leadership of several of our organizations. So
okay,
I'm going to try to say that this, and I'm going to end it with this, that the work of Nneka Diop is inside the monument, that his books and the work of other scholars is inside the monument. It's not the normal monument. It's an extraordinary African developed and worked out process that we have to reclaim our glory and step off on the right foot and claim our world for our posterity. Thank you very much.
Okay, asante sana for that, Dr. Jeffries. That was very, very enlightening. And I must join you when you mentioned the monument, because I've had the pleasure to have visited myself, and it's an awe-inspiring monument. And it's something worthy of all Africans making a pilgrimage to. Now, move on. So it's clear that from the answers everybody gave, they see reparation as about first and foremost, and not so much focusing on finances. But say that as we may, we know that the masses out there, when the word reparations up, they think hard cash. That's what they're thinking. Thinking our ancestors taught for hundreds of years, and it's time that we get paid. Especially for American participants, you would be very familiar with the rise of EDOS and the FBA, and listen to them. They are very much about compensation in a monetary form, and we can say that they have been very, very active, because I know they may be small in numbers, but in terms of what they are projecting, they're coming across like a huge mass. So what would you say in terms of what's been promoted by these such as ADOS and FA and outside of America, other similar trains of thought, that reparation should be about hard cold cash? We should be compensated the money owed to us, our ancestors put in to build the West. And another to that question, if it's about hard cold cash, who should be paying this cash? Should it be solely left to the governments of these various countries? Should it also go to the institutions, the banks, the insurance companies, and so forth? That has been dawning in the era of slavery. Again, I like to say, And at this point, please. Hold on.
No.
You're muted. Yes.
No, I think
We can't hear you, Elder. We cannot hear you.
Hold on. He's unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I think, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Coming
indeed.
through fine.
We should not distract ourselves on ADOS. So I'm only going to say a couple of things. My show, the Dr. Show, I brought Dr. Raymond Winbush, who's an authority on reparations, and a sister from Haiti to analyze them. And I'll just simply say this about them. They have a media presence. They are propagandists, and they are very good propagandists. They are anti any Africans coming into the United States. They started by being anti-Black immigrant, and then they found the issue of reparations. And so that has become like their calling card. And young people who pick it up and talk about, give me the money, I don't knock them because they don't know what's happening. So I just want to dismiss them. And let's get to the real issue. Is it money? It's more than money. And, you know, all the things that have been addressed by the leading reparation organizations, particularly dealing with redress around health, wealth, miseducation, mass incarceration. This is institutional, and these have to happen. But what I want to address is some areas that go into the area that our brother from South Africa spoke to, Sabelo, on self-repair. And I would also like to go into national repair, those two categories, and identifying the opponent we're up against. It's a mistake to identify the oppression that we face solely as racism or solely as racism and capitalism. Those are two key, but we often miss what's driving this, and that's the Aryan worldview. And one of the things that our scholars have been weak on, and Dr. Jacob Carruthers was the one that schooled me on this, and I've been doing this work. I'm finishing a book that it's part of it, it's not the main thing, is the Aryan worldview. And it's when you combine the Aryan worldview with racism, and I agree with Sister Favia Kujichagulia, we need to quit using the term white supremacy. For one reason, they're not supreme in the world anymore.
That's right.
They're going down the tube. And we have to be in the position now of replacement, because in the US, by 2044 or so, Black, brown, and red and yellow people will be the majority in the country. And our culture is going to drive change in the US, along with the positive features of Native American and other peoples of culture. And that's going to be about restructuring America. And then Africa's got the issue of coming up under what's out of what's described as neocolonialism. But again, it shouldn't just be phrased as we got these artificial boundaries and stuff, which is true, but Africa inherited the European nation state. And that nation state model needs to be discarded. And that was one of the biggest problems with independence, is the African leaders never questioned the house in which their governments were ruled under, because they had been trained under them and they were so happy just to be free. So those are two categories. So the first thing I want to say is we need to define the enemy correctly. And that enemy has got to do with racism. It's got to do with capitalism, but it's got to do with the Aryan worldview. And the key thing about that we need to understand, because when you link these two, you understand when the Europeans or the Aryans went on conquest, it was genocidal across the board. And the key thing is the definition of Aryan. Arius, Lord and Master. Aryan, no good for nothing, dirty masses. In other words, the view of the whites whose root is Aryan, coming out of the Caucasus Mountains in the second or third millennium BC, conquering India. That's the beginning of their history. And they come up with a history far worse than any enslavement we've ever seen, because they've come up with this idea of Varna or caste that is below slavery. They have conceived of something that is about as fiendish as it gets to be. And so this idea of Lord and Master, that is inherent in their view of themselves, that they are supposed to be running everything, but it is also their view of their own people, because they have no regard for their masses. And in the US, so they are dirty, low, no good for nothing scum. That's their view of their masses. In the US, they have been sold a bill of goods that free white and 21, therefore we're better than them. And now you're seeing the goodies are not being given to the masses. And as a result, you see January 6th. And what you're seeing is the masses themselves realize something's going on, but they got it wrong. They think it's us. It's them that's got their foot on their necks. So when you combine Aryanism with racism, then what you have is this conquest mentality. So that is the first thing. The second thing is self-repair and national repair. We should be now, particularly intellectuals, but our people as a whole, any of us that have time to think, we should be investing more time in thinking about the future while we're engaging in the struggle right now for changing our people's conditions. And there are certain areas that we need to address, and these are replacement paradigms. I'm a revolutionary. And so my thought is about systems that will take the place of the systems we're under. So what's the first one? Self-repair. A brother from South Africa raised. We were doing that in enslavement, by the way. We created a new African culture in enslavement, and African people in resistance were doing it as well. But we have the damage done by enslavement. And so we have to identify the stages that our people undergo when they're undergoing transformation. A brother named Bulunlela Wabogo and myself, we've identified the 6 stages of awakening that Amilcar Cabral went through, that Malcolm X went through, I've gone through personally. 6 stages. We need to understand what those processes are, take our people through them, identify them, because they're undergoing awakening now. Young people are in the States are going through what they call woke. They're undergoing awakening. So what is it? They need to understand it. And the mess needs to be put out of the way. And history is real key in that. Culture is real key in that. The second thing, we are imprisoned by a Aryan educational model. We think it's solely limited to miseducation around misinformation. That's part of it. Carter G. Woodson identified that. When you undergo awakening, you overcome that. But the problem is, as my good friend Dr. Theophilo Benga says, greatest master on ancient Kemet now, Dr. Chekana Diop's best student, he said, we got a problem. African-centered consciousness, Eurocentric methodology. Our method for being taught will put you right back into white land, just like the misinformation, even if you get the African-centered information. I'm working on a book now, Seba, that deals with this. All I'll say is this. The system of education that we have to resurrect, which in Kemet was called Seba, bringing the light that is within out, is where you be what you know, as opposed to knowing and just repeating what you know. Because if you're Black and African, even then, you will continue the brainwashing. And under a new African system, Blacks will be doing it to each other. So you got to free people so that people can be themselves and draw on their own gifts. The other thing is, reparations has been defined as dealing with enslavement and the consequences, and that's correct. But some of our scholars, too lazy to look at the fact that some of the greatest damage done to Blacks in the US and in Africa with these resource wars, with genocide in Rwanda and in other places, something else has happened in the African world. And that's a post-1968 thing. And I call that a choice between two cultures. This builds on the insecurities of slavery, but the forces that have hit the African world and Black communities in the US, deindustrialization, prison industrial complex, drugs, and the same in the Caribbean, in Africa, structural adjustment, and all these things. And the wars in the Congo around resources that have led to millions of people dying, and it is the result of corporations financing resource wars. This has created a situation that I call a choice between two cultures for the first time in our people's existence. We've been put in a position of choosing between a Aryan culture and our own. And since we don't really know the Aryan culture, we know racism, we don't know the rest, we're sinking into it and sometimes not even understanding why or what it is we're sinking into. This arbitrary violence we see going on in some Black communities and in the African world, this is a choice of a culture because Aryan culture is arbitrary. Aryan culture has no morals. It's teleological. It's utility based. Combined with racism, it's therefore very destructive. The other thing that I would chime in with Dr. Leonard Jeffries is we created culture all over the world. We created the world's first culture. Caribbean is rich in culture. Africa is the source. African Americans have created a new African culture, but we're not even conscious of it in the States. Some of us are. Sister Favia is one of the reasons why I respect her is that she marries both African American culture, African culture. I know her child does as well. Mr. C2, right? Taiwo. Y'all are into both. And wherever we are in the world, we need to be drawing from both roots. So I agree with Professor Leonard Jeffries, Dr. Leonard Jeffries. We need cultural renaissance. This one, though, I would suggest needs to be both an African and, in the case of the US, a new African, Afro-Caribbean. Wherever we are, we need to marry the two. Ancient Africa, the best of it, and what we've recreated, critique it and get the crap out of it. You know what I mean? Because we got mess in it, but we have beauty in it as well. There's a lot more, but what I'd say is that the biggest work. One final thing: family.
Okay.
And I'm ending on this one.
Yeah.
Dr. Leonard Jeffries made this point. Key to this is constructing paradigms or resurrecting paradigms that identified just family systems, because that's the model on which you build society. So that's it.
Okay. Thanks again, Dr. OT. And I'd now like to go to Professor Kujichakli. And I'd like to put the same point to you. As I'm saying, yes, we are in consensus about reparation. That's the first approach. But out there, you can see, you speak to people about reparations, where they're looking for when is a check coming. And in the United States, you have had the rise of ADOS and FBI that has fed into that. And they are very skillful at using, say, social media to put their thoughts. So it's gone far and wide, and that's what people are not keen into. So how would you say advise people that in them is going path?
Well, first, I never give any attention or value or reinforcements to insanity. I don't mention that other group. I don't talk about them. I don't put their words in my mouth, because that is speaking power to truth, and they are not truthful about reparations. Don't have time for them. The word we want to be looking at is the group is in Cobra. Think reparations, think in Cobra. Okay, and then all of the other organizations that are supportive of that as well. Yes, but when you think reparations, think in Cobra, National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations, and we're going to say everywhere. Basically, this concept, this misconception is synonymous to this auto industry, accident. You know, when there's an auto accident, the insurance companies try their best to pay you off as quickly as possible to eliminate the whole issue. So they try to get a check in your hand quickly, and therefore you are no longer eligible for any type of resolution, repayment, reparations down the line. That's what this other group is getting us to look at. That's what racism wants us to look at. Think of money, which is not real. Let us give you this money, and then we can let all of this go away. No, you take that little bitty check today, doesn't fix your back tomorrow. You still have back pain, headache, all of the pains that will continue to exist will exist irrespective of the money. Same thing with our situation. Genocide will not go away with money. You can't buy off genocide. I don't care how much you give anyone or everyone. That does not eliminate white psychopathy, as Dr. Tashaka said, this Aryan insanity that we live under. Money will not eliminate white psychopathy. Only we can do that. And as long as people are sick mentally, we're out of our minds, what good is all the money in the world if you're out of your mind? First thing we have to do is get our minds black. We have to take black our minds. I call it be born again African. We can be born again Christian, born again virgin, be born again African. Take our minds black. When you take your minds black, then you realize money is not the solution. Money did not enslave us. Money did not lynch us. People did. Brains did. We have to look at psychology. Money is not a solution. Remember, it is artificial. It can't build a house, grow food, make clothes. It's artificial. Racism wants us to look at these artificial phenomenons as a solution to a serious, real problem. Racism, genocide, white psychopathy will not go away with money, cannot be solved by money. Stop talking about money. Money is irrelevant. That we don't even talk about economics. Economics is above money. Systems of distributing, systems of legal tender, systems of resources, land. If we're going to talk about that, at least talk economics, not money. Stop talking about money. It is a trick bag that they want us to fall into to pretend that everything can be resolved with money. It cannot be. We're talking genocide, white psychopathy. We must eliminate the insanity, the mental disease of white psychopathy, which basically is the framework that all of us live under. So that's what we need to be looking at. How do we get our minds black? How do we take black our culture, take black our minds? Stop looking at money. Think of economics. Think of institutions. Think of nation building. Bigger than money.
Okay, it's anti know that. Now, I'd like to turn to Brother Glenroy. See, you're busy making notes. Now, the Global Congress, same kind of question in terms of their approach, in terms of trying to get to convince people that take your eyes off, say, the money and concentrate more on. So in terms of the Global African Congress now, the movements that you have seen in the United States, such as ADOS and such as FBA, are similar minds within this country as well. And I know it was born out of the country in Barbados. So, I'm in Gyak, what have you found to try to convince people to see things?
I don't hear it.
Yeah, you gotta unmute Glenroy. Yeah, I'm trying to unmute you, but
I still not hear.
yeah, Brother Glenroy, can unmute.
Okay, he's unmuted now.
Yeah, I was actually
Yes.
using another microphone. But you've unmuted this. Hear me now? Okay.
Yeah, talk louder.
Okay. Yeah, just to say.
But you need to raise your voice a bit. Just raise your voice.
Okay, is that any better? Is
A
that better?
Little bit.
Better. Okay. All right, I can start much from Brother Leonard Jeffrey. Okay, just to agree with our sister that this idea of money is the trap. It's what we call monkey trap. You know, money in a hole where you can't get your hand out once you put your hand on it and hold it. So it's a little like the so-called apology from people who clearly don't care and have been trying to eliminate us from the planet. So I'm very clear that it's not a issue of money, as Elder Pep out Chinwezel's position. But in regard to ADAS, let's be very clear. These are people who are investment, and their intention is to support the state of America. They are invested in that culture and behavior of the US. They're not Africans, they're invested in what Africans want reparation. And the thing that people need to put on the table
It's choppy, Brother Glenroy. It's choppy.
is reparation.
yeah. The
Can you can you still hear
sound
me?
is yeah, but it's very choppy. It's going in and out.
It's a problem I always have with my phone. Let me try to keep going on the see if I can.
Well, go on a bit and let me see. No, I don't think it's going to work. I'll tell you what. I'll go and just try in the background. Just try and see if we can rectify it to an extent.
Come back to me.
Yeah, we can't hear at all. What Glenroy is trying to sort out those technical issues. And to Sister Tower now. I know they're very active in Cuba. So, in terms of what has been your experience? Have you come up against this? And if so, what has been the experience? Pushing one thing and they are out there pushing something else. Okay. Let me see if we can unmute you. Yeah. You're muted.
I don't hear you.
Say something,
Yeah.
Kyle.
Not hearing, she said. You're hearing. Oh boy. No, some.
Is this better?
Because she's on. Hold on, she's unmuted, but she's not hearing for some reason. I'll tell you what. Try logging out and logging back in and see if that could solve any problem. Log out and log back in. Yeah. So while we're doing that, I'll go back to Glenroy and see if it sounds any better.
What our sister is trying that? Can you hear me?
Yeah, talk
I
louder.
can hear you. You gotta talk louder.
Okay. Let me get this way. It might be a bit better. Okay. Is it good?
No, still very choppy.
Um, if you can hear me, I just want to say that ADAS, I can speculate, are in the situation in the US, and that's their attitude. But let's remember reparation and colonialism, the demands for reparation, and colonialism, the crimes against humanity, they will remain on the books until everyone concerned is satisfied. So this attempt to divert us will not work. So that people remember what the objectives are, and that is to resolve a crime against our people. Crime genocide. We have survived, but the crime it was still committed. So I don't know if you heard that. Apologize of the number front.
No, we
And
don't. Well, let's get.
Not coherent.
Yeah, we let's get bit. It's not coming through.
okay, all right.
Okay, we'll try. Sister
And I'm
Towers back.
in the UK.
I know. Try it next time when you bring it back. Try it without the headphones and see. May work, may not. Okay, I'll go back to Sister Tower. Can you hear me now? No, you can't. No, it's still not hearing. No, no,
You all hear me
no.
now?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
Oh,
yes, yes, yes.
so apparently I cannot use these. Okay. In terms of ADOS, we know that they exist, and you know they are very, I guess, active on Twitter and things like that, and they make their opinions very known. However, we do not. We have a youth commission who does try to have a presence, an active presence on Twitter to kind of steer people away from that, to inform people that Cobra has been around for 30 plus years. That if you want to look at an organization that actually has a history on working with reparations and working for reparations, then you should look at Cobra and not ADO. We have a commission. We have two commissions, actually, the media commission and the youth commission, who works on trying to re-steer some of that energy that people are focusing on ADOS so that we can get people accurate information, right? Because within Cobra, we do understand that, yes, compensation should be a part of it, but money is not going to fix everything at all. And so we have different commissions to address different things. We have the Economic Development Commission putting those systems in place to address those concerns. Like, okay, so we have money. What are we doing with this money? How are we ensuring that this money is not being funneled right back into these corporations that are exploiting our people? So we have commissions that are centered around doing that work. We have an education commission. Dr. Leonard Jeffries was talking about the need for a cultural renaissance. One of the things that the Education Commission focuses on is how do we use the art and culture to really re-educate our people. We have a wonderful new African culture that has been created on these shores. We have wonderful African history and culture, and when we marry the two, and I was raised doing that. My mother, Professor Kuti Chagalia, does that. I'm a performing artist. I teach performing arts, but I teach in the schools, and with my own business, I teach purposeful performing arts. How can we use the performing arts to have that cultural renaissance, right? So we look at all these things in Cobra with our different commissions because we understand that repair has to be, as Professor Kuchaglia was saying, there are three dimensions, right? And it has to incorporate all of those things. It cannot just be monetary compensation, because we know in the current condition of our people, and not just our people on these shores, but our people worldwide, we know that the current condition of our people, if we receive, it doesn't matter how much money we receive, they're going to reinvest it right back into the corporations that are currently exploiting us here on these shores and in the diaspora and around the world. So we need to address people's minds. We need to address the psychology of African people everywhere, so that we understand that whatever we get monetarily, whatever little bit we have to reinvest it into us, right? Into our freedom, into the things that will support and build up African communities around the world. So that is Cobra's stance. And we do have people who try to disseminate information that is accurate information, that is information that will build up our people, as opposed to the information that ADOS puts out there that can really be detrimental to people who do not have an understanding of what it means to really be free.
Okay, Santa Sanford, thank you very much. I would like to go to Brother Johnny. Now, Brother Johnny, the same thing, because you're very active now in the reparation every year on the 1st of August. So, in that movement that you're building, have you found any kind of resistance approach that you're taking But in that self-repair as a priority, not monetary compensation.
Thank you, Elder Mahaka, for the question. As you know, we plan as a part of the African Emancipation Day Reparation March Committee, in partnership with the Stop the Mangamizi We Charge Genocide Ecocide campaign. We plan the annual Pan-African Reparation Rebellion groundings, and as such, we intend to galvanize our community to build the awareness of the issue of reparation, and to draw attention to African people's global determination to not allow British state and other perpetrators to get away with the crime of the Mangamizi. And the Mangamizi is a Kiswahili term, which means the African Holocaust of chattel, colonial, and neo-colonial enslavement. So we want to do our role, do our part here in the UK, on the ground, galvanizing our people. Now, that happens on the 1st of August every year. We're in Brixton Windward Square this year again, on the 1st of Mosiah, which is the 1st of August. And we are also encouraging our people to listen to this broadcast in the UK, internationally. Make your presence be felt. Come out, support this global gathering of African people to let the world know that we mean business on reparation, and we will not allow them to get away with what they have done to our people. Now, after the 1st of August, there is a year-round campaign that we do, that we try to galvanize support in grassroots quarters, in many different spaces, to try to win our position forward. And one of the tactics we've been using is that we've been using local councils. So we lobby and we pressure local council to adopt motions on reparation. So within the last year and a half, we've had 3 councils so far who has adopted and passed motion to support the reparation movement, and to call for an all-party parliamentary commission of inquiry for truth and reparative justice, right here in the UK Parliament and in the European Parliament. And that would be similar to the commission that is established in America to investigate the damage, the legacy of enslavement on African people today. So those are some of the things that we're constantly doing on the ground. So far, we have had Lambeth Council who have passed motion to support our call for the all-party commission of inquiry. We have had Islington Council has also passed motion, and recently, at the beginning of the year, we have had Bristol, City of Bristol, has also passed an atonement and reparations motion. And that is the Bristol, as everyone know, one of the major ports that deals with the enslavement of African people. A lot of the shipbuilding, a lot of the financing that was gained from the enslavement of African people was used to build Bristol. And and that's where the statue was torn down of Colston statue, one of the greatest inhuman, brutal enslavers in our history, responsible for at least the murdering of 100,000 African people and probably more. So in that city, we're now making big move in terms of, we have a mayor, an African mayor, who's supporting the reparation movement and is pushing the campaign for reparation. So we are there defending that space. And in terms of self-repair, we are now charged now with preparing our reparation plan to present to the council to now enact and implement to deal with some of the issues facing the African communities in Bristol. So that is some of the underground thing that we do throughout the year, and other campaigning to raise awareness, to have these conferences, to have these workshops, constantly educate our people and raise the awareness of reparation. Now, as far as the hashtag movement that float around on the internet, ignore them. I think what the elders and the professors said about them so far suffice, because they are just a distraction, and I agree with that. In the early stage, I listened to some of the comments and some of the despicable statement and the anti-African attitude that they have no place in the reparation movement. Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? We are a global African family and repair ourselves. We damage everywhere we are in this world. This Mangamisi has damaged all of us. We're all trying to collectively support and repair each other wherever we are. If Africans in America are struggling, we back them 100%. If they're in the Caribbean struggling, we back them. In Colombia, in Brazil, here in Europe, elsewhere, we're back. On the continent of Africa, we back our brothers and sisters. So there's no division when it comes to articulating a vision for reparation. And there's no place for that. So, and that's what I'd like to say. I appreciate the professor speak of a white psychopathy. You're teaching me, sister. I appreciate that education. And that's what these forums are for. We educate and we learn and we share. And I appreciate that. And I really hope we can get that into our vocabulary and disseminate that. Also, I want to encourage, because on the 1st of August in London, we need people to come out. So I'm making a call. I'm using this platform to the brothers, the strong brothers in our community. This is a call out for the man them to come out and support your people, to provide your national service to your people. When we have thousands of Africans on the streets, we need eyes and ears. We need people to steward and protect our people. Come out. You can't leave it to the sisters, them, or anybody else to do it. If you're a strong black African man, come out into the streets. Come out. You're part of an organization. Come out. You get the training, get your equipment, and we're going to protect our people on that day. So I'm calling on to you. Call us this number, 079-22-035-446. Or you can email info@reparationsmarch.org and get in touch with us. Your service is needed. Steward, first aiders, security badge holders, we need you on the front line. Come out and help our people. And if you can come out as collect signatures to help people sign the petitions, because we have a petition here in the UK as a part of our campaign that we are petitioning the UK government on the issue of reparation. We have a petition called We Charge Genocide Ecocide Petition that we need our people to sign. Go on change.org, and we're asking you to sign that petition and educate yourself about what are our terms and conditions that we are pushing on this government, we're demanding from this government. Read and learn that. So it's a participatory campaign. You can't sit on the sideline. Reparation belongs to all Africans. All our ancestors were impacted, and all our people are feeling the legacy today. So I'm just using this opportunity to tell you to get involved in the campaign. It's a year-round, day-to-day battle. We've got to prepare. We want this commission of inquiry, because the world needs to know. Our issues need to be addressed. Our voices need to be heard. We have not had our day in court. We have not had a day in the tribunal. We have not had a People's International Tribunal for African Reparation. We need that. A tribunal for global justice. We need that. And that is some framework, some of the architects in the reparation movement here in the UK and in Africa and elsewhere are working on those structures to be able to bring our case forward. And thank you so much for this opportunity. And if I get a chance to speak again, I will say more. Thank you so much.
Yes, Santisan for that, Brother Jelani. And I'd like to tell the bellow. And I'd like to focus in on the mindset on the African continent of the whole concept of reparation. I mean, when we look at places like the Congo, when the horrific atrocities that took place, Tanzania itself and the apartheid regime, atrocities after atrocities, and right across Africa. So, is there a sense, or is there a movement on the continent that is for a form of reparation from those colonial I don't want to use the word colonial powers because I don't see them as powers, from those colonial misrulers that many, many years exploited the African continent. Is there a sense of collective coming together to demand some kind of reparations?
Thank you, Brother Tahaka. In a nutshell, the answer is no. A lot of our people are basically in the dark as to the whole concept of reparations, and there is still this belief that we cannot do a lot of things on our own. And for those who speak reparations, there is still this mentality that revolves around the money thing. For instance, what just recently happened with Namibia and the 1.3 billion from Germany, some people are excited, and some of us are basically saying, okay, what does that really, truly represent? And what does it really mean? Is it now a belief that the Germans have been absolved of all the atrocities that were committed against the Namibians, the Herero particularly, and this money, is it being paid to government or is it being paid for the development of the Herero communities? What exactly is the issue there? And you find that here, after apartheid, the concept of reparations, I don't know how the ANC agreed to the position as was, which was basically to say reparations would be paid by the current government for the atrocities of apartheid. And they identified certain number of people. If my memory serves me right, it was almost like 30,000 or less than that out of the entire population of people who were identified as the worthy recipients of reparations, and they got pittance, and that was it. End of story. No one else was interested in anything going further. In the DRC, you mentioned the DRC, as against people fighting for what rightfully belongs to them because of the sponsored wars, particularly by the foreign governments and the foreign businesses that literally sponsor warlords in different parts of the DRC so that they can exploit the resources. People are more on a survival mode. And because they are in that particular position of survival mode, they are not really in a position to think about some of these things and actually begin to say, let's collectively organize ourselves against this, that, or the other. And see, one of the fallacies that we have been basically exposed to, and we got it sold to us and we bought it hook, line, and sinker, is the whole concept of multi-party democracy. You find that in Africa, you can go into an election and have like 40, 50 political parties all on the ballot paper. And that is all designed to make sure that we are kept weak all the time. We are kept looking at the things that divide us as against the things that basically bring us together. If I were to get up today and decide I wanted to have a political party, I can assure you I'll be very rich overnight, because there is someone who will be ready to give me money, because they know that by so doing, I'm causing division. And the people cannot stand together and fight an evil system that has been perpetrated against the people. So we basically are in a very difficult position from a perspective that says a lot of our people are in survival mode. And because they're in survival mode, some of these things seem like a luxury, and you really have to educate. So what we have done from the perspective of the School of African Awareness is we have what we call matric here. Matric is basically the highest grade at high school. and from there people go up to tertiary. So for those people who did not get good marks, we have started what we call metric upgrade. And then we just teach them and prepare them to receive their exams so that they can elevate themselves. But because of the realization of the fact that university itself is basically a platform by which to mess up their minds and basically continue with that colonial mindset, we have started a scenario where together with teaching them what prepares them for the exams, we also teach them in as far as the African awareness side of things is concerned, so that they can begin to see the world through their African eyes and have the African reality at the center of how they interpret their own experiences and therefore their perception of the world. Because as we speak right now, we all see the world through European eyes. Very few of us see the world through our own African eyes. We used to laugh with some friends in the past that, you know, we've come to a point where a lot of our people even think in English and have to translate to their local languages before they can be able to communicate. So that is the reality of the disaster that we find ourselves in. And what we've done as well is that we've started book reading clubs, whereby we select a book and we make it a point that the book that we start with all the time is Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey, because that just generally lays a foundation for who we are, and at the same time it consolidates the whole idea of our redefinition of the African nation. Because Professor Kuchichagulia mentioned a very, very important thing. I hadn't even realized that it had gone up to 2 trillion, the amount of money that is basically within our people in the United States. And there is no reason why, if we were to view ourselves as a nation, we can't have an economy that basically is global, with us on the continent supplying what you need that side and you supply the money. We would not be having to run around in the name of looking for donors and looking for aid and looking for investors, because the investment would be coming from people who are already ideologically sound in as far as where we are going and who we are, and therefore consolidating the African nation. And that of itself consolidates our understanding of what reparation means and is about. Because for as long as the nation is splintered in the manner that it is, you'll find that our reparations will be confined to small little corners here and there, everyone doing their own little thing, and we will never be able to consolidate in the manner that we're supposed to. So we have a big job done, Brother Tahaka, to be able to get the message across to everyone and get everyone to get over the survival mode and actually begin to exist and actually begin to enjoy the benefits of the riches of the continent. Thank you.
Okay, Santis. And I would like to turn to Elder Bay. You're a big fan of ways his work on reparation. But I know you've been pushing it for many years and trying to convince people that's the way to move. Now, in your terms of pushing it, what what has been the feedback or the reaction you've got to it? Is that people are grasping what you were saying and thinking, yes, this is right? Or is it a case that, again, most people see further than those because they're thinking of is when is that check arrive? Okay. All right, let me take your minute.
Let me begin with where Brother Sabello ends. We use a device, a computer. That's how we're communicating. I don't know a lot about computer, but a little bit I know that you have to program it and you have to look after it. And there comes a time you have to defrag it because all the virus have taken over and it doesn't function properly. So we, the global African people, need to be defragged. All this Europeanness need to come out of our heads. Because we talk about in survival mode, but he didn't mention something else. We're now in fear. We're in lockdown. And none of us is talking about that. And if we don't deal with that, nothing else matters. But I'll come to that in a minute. You see, we have to understand that we are global people, very fragmented. Because what Nkoba is doing, what Jack is doing, what this is doing, it's all in little bits scattered and there's no cohesion. We have to give up some individual freedom for some collective freedom. And we're too happy going it alone. We're too happy being isolated from each other. We have to make the reparation a global movement. It has to start from the grassroots to lift up. There was a time right here in Britain when different organizations in London, in different parts of the country, would travel up to Birmingham, that's the middle of the country, and would have dialogue. That has stopped. So we have one group, the Reparation March Committee, who is doing fantastic work and producing some very good results. What is happening to the rest of us? Where's the linkages? And we have to begin the serious business. Recognize the global movement and how we put one brick on top of another brick to build it. We too love isolation. Every man is an island. Every man have his own flag and his own anthem, and he can't defend nothing. So, I've been just checked the first African Liberation Day in Britain by the Pan-African Congress movement was 1975. This year, 21, is 46 years. Let this be like the Manchester Conference of 1945. Let it be a decisive conference that those of us who are here are charged with the responsibility of building the reparation movement on a global scale. Because right now, we have a whole heap of opportunists, governments who've shot at cash and looking for money, and reparations are cash cow that can come and milk. And it has nothing to do with reparation. Reparation is about rebuilding ourselves, rebuilding our institution. And all we have to ask ourselves, what is the recipe to do that? If I go to Sister Chagahuli's house and she hand me a piece of cake and I like it, and I said, that's a lovely cake, she would have to give me the recipe how to go home and do it. And if I follow the recipe correctly, I too will have this lovely cake. But if I just sit on my backside, throw anything in the pot, wheel it around, what the hell would I have? A big mess. And that is where we are. Let us be honest with ourselves. And let us challenge ourselves that we need to do better, and we can. And we should start here. So let us go away from here. All the knowledge, all the skill, we've got it. But what is missing is the application. We're too comfortable, we're too satisfied with where we are. We know we're in the doldrums, and we need to lift ourselves up, because at least we're good at one thing. We all saying the same thing. We all sing the same song, but we're out of tune. So let's tune up. Let's balance back up and come back again strong. So I'm saying, let us seize this opportunity. No reverse. Go forward, but go forward together. We're not lacking experience. We're not lacking knowledge. Our beloved ancestors, great historian John Henry Clark, posed a question to all of us. What was the question? Okay. The question is, can we save ourselves? That's not his word, but my mind's tired. And we don't have to think about it. We have a resounding yes. The question is, do we have the will? Do we have the will? And the will is lacking. We're not showing will. When I was a boy growing up, there was a very common game of cricket in Jamaica. Who bat, who have the bat, who have the ball, have the ball. And when you finish bat, you pull on the bat, you go about the business. We need a team. We need teamwork. We need to lay down structures, not what's happening in Cuba, what's happening there, what's happening over there, what's up. One agenda, one blueprint. That is our responsibility. That is a task we move today with. This mealy-moly approach is not getting us anywhere, and our enemies are laughing at us because we have made ourselves a laughing stock. Let us use our senses, our experience, our knowledge collectively. And I'm glad we have two sisters on the platform, because we men can mess things up with our stupid egos. So let us go from here with the responsibility that we have a duty, overdue. But let's not fool ourselves. Those globalists have a different plan to turn us into transhumanism, eating worms, if we're lucky. And if we don't fix that, nothing matters. And when we met last time, Obati was there, my good sister was here, Brother Small was also there. And I posed a question. I didn't get anything substantial from Brother Shaka and Brother Small. My sister here did give a good response. And it's because I'm heavily loaded. I haven't followed it up. So I take full responsibility for that. But let me say, we talk about the madness of these people. If white people are part of the human family, they've left it quietly and didn't tell us. Because the way they're behaving like the Neanderthal ancestors. They're not behaving like human beings. And it's because we allow them to carry on with the madness. So if we don't shut down this madness, they shut down all of us. I'm done with it right here. Kanye, you better talk.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, to Dr. Jeffries. There's a phrase I came across time ago, and it went like this: weak people cannot demand reparations in any form. So that being said, are you in agreement that until Africa and her people are in a position of strength, we cannot even contemplate in, as happened recently, when a delegation went to, I think it was the Senate in the United States, and a proposal for reparations? Why should they listen to us? Why should they give anything to us to do it with any power? So what is regarding that?
Well, I'm glad you raised the issue. We need to analyze it. I think we've been bamboozled into thinking we don't have power. We are the most powerful part of the human family. We're located everywhere on the planet, islands of the Pacific, as well as the continent of Africa, as well as the diaspora. The question is a strategy, a formulation to use the power. America is not going through the changes it's going through now because it just so happened. Black people, young people, old people have been moving. There's a great fear that blacks are having more power in their hands in America than ever before. My nephew is one of the key people inside with a consciousness. These women are coming forth. It's not because of fear of they fear us. White folks are saying we're losing it. Look around. Black people are here. Even the president has been influenced by black folks. The Democrats wouldn't have won the election. One black man said, "Don't worry, you weren't successful in the northern part of America. Wait till you come to my homeland in the South, and we'll change that." I mean, he made the declaration, and they went south, and people mobilized themselves. But they need an agenda that's serious in the African dimension. White folks are scared to death of what we might do in terms of organization. White folks fear that we have now power. We're going to talk about Tulsa. How the hell? Well, Tulsa was passed. No, it's not. Tulsa is a reality. Tulsa has been all over the African world. Tulsa was in my father's town when my grandfather was murdered and whatnot. Tulsa is a reality. They owe us, and they fear that we're going to make the demands on ourselves as well as on the system capability. We are key to any system that white folks want to do. They can't run this nation without us. They can't come up with plans without us. When they're talking about poverty, white folks are poor, but they think they have white supremacy, so they're rich. You can't sell it. The movement of our people, women, children, our musicians, our artists, we just have to coalesce that into a meaningful package, which is our obligation, which is what we have to do. You don't see any white women standing up like our women. There's a black woman who's the mayor of Chicago, a black woman who's the mayor of Washington, a black woman who's the mayor of Detroit. How can you say you don't have power? And you've got it in your hands. But you have to do like Adam Clayton Powell said, what's in your hand, black man? What's in your hand is the power that you have using your Africanized mind and take them down from their European behind. So that's we have to understand the power. Any move that we make would upset the stock market in a serious way. And if we came up with a plan that's going to affect the stock market before we know it, they would say, well, what do you want? And then we have to have a plan ready. You owe us. You cannot pay for the millions and millions of Africans slaughtered in your process of death and destruction. The Native Americans, our brothers and sisters, wiped out completely. Nobody is thinking of the tens of millions of them. And they not only wiped out the Native American physical population, they murdered the buffalo. 1 million buffaloes were poisoned so that the food supply, smallpox blankets were presented to the Native Americans. The hands of the European are clean with clear with blood from the various groups that they've touched. We don't have to be nice about it. We have to lay it out. You owe us, and if you want to share the space on the planet with us, you're going to have to be fair, and this is our agenda, and this is what we expect.
Okay, thank you very much, Sana, for that generous read. Dr. Jeffries, time has beaten us. The next 5 minutes, I'd just like to go quickly, just for a final comment on the topic of today. And I'd just like everybody to take note and say 2 minutes, just to give final comments of what they think of reparations and how the situation of reparations, say, next 10 years. At what stage do you think we will be at? So I'll go over to Shaka first, just for the comments.
I'll be very brief. I think that where we'll be at 10 years from now is determined by where our movements for liberation will be at if we are in the Western Hemisphere, not under African nation states, and where African nations are at in terms of struggling for both African unity and for revising this nation state. So reparations is tied directly to power, and the weak don't get reparations. And it's obviously got to go to the repair of us on an institutional level. So I think that that's determined by what we do.
Okay, Sana. Brother Johnny, same question to you. Where do you think we'll be in 10 years regarding reparations?
You mean Dulani?
Yeah, Brother Jelani.
Dulani, yes, yes.
Dulani, sorry.
Dulani, yes, indeed. I want to say it has been an honor to be among this distinguished panelists. It's my first time being on a panel with Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Obert Shaka and Professor Kudi Chagalier, our daughter, and Sabelo. Ella Pekpakai is a good friend of mine. We see each other, regularly. And Tahaka, we are a part of the movement here. I want to say it's an honor. It's an honor to be amongst this group. In terms of how we see the reparation movement advancing, our theme this year for the reparation rebellion groundings is defeating the Mangamizi of neo-colonialism with African autonomy. All roads must lead to our sacred cause of reparation. I mean, all the struggles that we're struggling needs to coalesce at reparation, because it's in the healing, it's in the repairing where we get the real solution to our problems as African people. There's no running away from reparation until we are able to begin the healing process. All of the problems that the politicians them and all the other people are focusing on, it will just keep going around in cycles. They throw money at it and throw money at it until they begin to address the real issue of repairing of African people, the damage done, like our esteemed elder Leonard Jeffrey just pointed out, the blood on the hands of the oppressors, until we begin to address it, until we begin to address the harm, nothing will get done. Now, in terms of practically on the ground, we have to begin to see an autonomous situation where we begin to think of ourselves as a nation, rebuilding our nation. And I can tell you this, the Africans in the UK is ready to play our role and are playing our role in the global African struggle, in the international social movement for African reparation. We will be playing our role, and we will be pushing more councils on the local level to push for the all-party commission of inquiry to allow African people to begin to tell their story, how it's impacting on us. And in the next 5 to 10 years, we're hoping to be advance that commission of inquiry. We begin to assist our people to prepare their cases. Each of us, each our family, need to prepare cases. Our organization need to prepare cases. Even our nation state need to start preparing case to present to this commission of inquiry that we'll be dealing with solving the issue of reparation. So thank you so much, my brother, for this opportunity. I look forward to working with our African family across the globe on the issue of reparation. Hotep.
Okay. Antisana, Hotep. Yeah, same for you. The next 10 years or so, where do you see the reparation movements in general? Are you?
Who did he call?
Directed at me.
Unmute her.
Pepakai.
Okay, sure.
Is it? Pepakai.
Yes. As Brother Shaka said, that depends on where we start. And where we need to start is on the self-repair road. Repair ourselves, repair institution. Once we get that into place, everything else falls into line. And that's to be a global movement, starting local, national, international. We don't need anything from anybody. Just 1 second. We don't need anything from outsiders. All we need is within. Our beloved president who they've assassinated, Pombe Magufuli, demonstrate money is not the issue, it's the mind. That is what matters. An African mind for African development, African progress, African solidarity, African love, African unity, African race building. That's all.
Okay, Santisana for that. And now, where do you see the reparation movement in the near future?
Brother, repeat what you said, please.
Professor Kujichale, are you hearing me?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. The same question. So where do you
okay.
see the reparations going, say, in the next, 10, 20 years? Where do you see the move? Do you see progress or do you see regression?
Until we take control of our brain, I have to agree with Dr. Pepakai. We are out of our minds, thanks to, as Dr. Tashaka said, Aryanism, white psychopathy. Most of us are out of our minds. As my brother in Africa said, we're in survival mode. And we can't even see past getting out of survival mode, because that, again, is part of this Eurocentric insanity of I have to be, content before I can work or fight for anything. You have to fight for anything before you have anything. So we have got to take our minds back and realize that we have got to get out of this mindset of white psychopathy. We've got to eliminate white psychopathy. The myth of white superiority has to be totally eradicated from the face of the earth. Because while we're talking today, there are children being born who are going to learn white psychopathy, who are going to learn self-hate. We have got to eliminate all the lies. So truth is one of the things I deal with, because the truth, as we know, is going to set us free. We need the truth of our history, the truth of our culture, the truth of what has happened to us. When we have that truth, we have that knowledge and information, we will become wise enough to move forward. So until we learn to love our African culture, our African selves, love our African mind, get out of that Aryan mindset, get out of the mindset of white psychopathy, we'll be here in 20 years talking about these things. Unfortunately, we cannot have that happen. As Dr. Jeffrey said, all of us are getting older. We have scholars here right now on this earth who can help eliminate those things if we get together and organize, develop a plan. Plan cannot exclude the elimination of white psychopathy, the eradication of racism and Aryanism from our minds. Once we do that, everything will fall into place. It's like the domino effect. We will know exactly what to do, how to do it, when to do it. Once we learn to love ourselves and each other, it will be easy once we eradicate insanity from our brains.
Okay, Professor. And now, Tower. Yeah, you got to unmute it.
Okay, can
Yeah,
you hear me?
that's great. Yes, I can hear. Yeah, clear. Yeah, the same question, especially in Colbert. Where do you see in Colbert in the next 10, 20 years?
Well, I
This
see
issue of reparation.
in terms of reparations, I see in Cobra in the next 10 years, making a lot of, and I use this term very lightly, progress in terms of commissions being founded and reparations in certain smaller areas, like cities have planned or have passed reparations resolutions, and we see a lot of forward movement in that regard happening in individual cities around the country. I teach in Oakland, California, in the school district here. OUSD, the public school system, just passed a resolution for reparations for Black students. So we'll continue to see this kind of thing. The beauty in these smaller resolutions is that as these resolutions get passed and people realize that you can throw money at something, but it doesn't really restore, right, people, and it's not fully repairing people. I think as people see these things passing and they see the lack of repair being done because it's only looking at a financial portion, I do think that will give some impetus for people to look at the psychology of the fact that repair has to come from, just like everyone is saying, eliminating white psychopathy, getting rid of that Aryan worldview. Like, we're going to start seeing that in the next 10 years as these resolutions continue to be passed, because we're seeing that and all these commissions being founded really around the world at this point. So as this happens, my hope is that people will see the need to look at reparations on that level of what's happening with our minds, repairing African people, not just throwing money at the problem and hoping that that's going to fix everything, because we all know that it will not. That we'll start to see this worldwide, this global cultural renaissance, and that we will see more movement in terms of African people uniting around the world as a necessity, seeing that even when we see these little tiny things happening in individual locations, it's not really addressing repair. So I think that it's beneficial to see these things happen, just so that people can see a real life illustration of, oh, we thought throwing money at this would help, and we realize that it does not. We will start to see more people wake up and realize that the issue is really in our minds and repairing the damage that has been done to African people around the world psychologically. And just like Professor Kuchaglia was saying, once that happens and we can eliminate that everything will start to fall into place like a domino effect.
Okay, Sana, for that. Finally, Dr. Jeffries, the same to you. Where do you see this whole reparation movement, say, in the next 25 years? I think it would be one of, yeah, where do you see it in the next 25 years, the movement?
I've been blessed to be on the planet for 80 plus years. And I've been through the various changes that we talked about. I've had a chance to relate to the various important figures. Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Sekou Touré. These were people we worked with. There is a blueprint that we have in place, but we got to tap into it. Our brother from Mississippi started out in looking at the awakening the consciousness of the Black child and ended up by producing a 1,000-page volume called A Blueprint for Black Power. So if we take that knowledge, that experience that we have, and map out a blueprint, we will be following the path that others, the Pan-African Congress, when they met in 1945, and then they moved from there into national independence, the independence movement. They moved from there into the OAU, was useful for a certain point, but then they went into the AU. And now the AU has to be expanded. Our people are growing in their consciousness. The women are taking power. All the greatness that I've been able to visit and see, I couldn't do it without my wife. She's been with me for 56 years. You know, when things get rough and it looks like it's going to fall apart, then she comes with, no, it ain't. We've done it before. We're going to do it again. And the same thing with Pepper Kai. Pepper Kai was in my little village in Georgia. I see him now taking pictures of the schools that we built, of the churches that they built, of the cemetery. He was under shooting pictures, and I can still feel him in my village where they had murdered my grandfather in 1917. But that didn't stop the family. His wife, my grandmother, called her sons back together again to keep that African village consciousness together. I mean, we have to understand from whence we come and where we need to go. African Renaissance is a reality. It is a blueprint for Black power that's necessary. Brother Charles, let me talk about this organization. Now, Brother Charles is assisting my wife and I, and he's involved in all kinds of movements of the young people. And then, so we have to do an assessment of what is happening. And then clearly we are on a victorious path. Malcolm was here for his few moments. He left us with an understanding. Du Bois left us with, Garvey left us with. It's a question of Pan-Africanism or perish. It's a question of Pan-Africanism now. Come up with a 5-year plan. Come up with that, follow it with a 10-year plan. Come up with another plan. And Cobra can't do it all. I've been within Cobra from the birth. Professor Scobie, one of my partners, was a co-chair, and Cobra has grown. So we need to understand it. The African Heritage Studies Association, which Dr. Clark took us to challenge white folks in terms of this history, and we were able to, now African heritage is still being rebuilt. The Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations took on the responsibility of taking the legacy. We have had so many successes. We've got to put them together in a plan. Frederick Douglass said it best: if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom yet deprecate agitation are men, and we can add women, who want the crops without plowing up the ground. They want the rain without the thunder and lightning. This struggle must be a moral one, or it must be a physical one, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, it never will. Find out what any people will quietly submit to the exact measure of justice and wrong, which will be imposed upon them, and these will continue until they are resisted with a meaningful plan and program. And that's where we're going. It's wonderful to see all of you. I mean, it's unbelievable that here we are at this point, coming up with some ideas and whatnot that Nkrumah and Padmore and then we're talking about years ago, that Julius Nyerere and others were working on. I've been all over England. London we started with Brother Lewis, Lester Lewis. Then we went on to Manchester and other places. And we saw the people waking up wherever we've gone. You go to Amsterdam, there's a Black community in Amsterdam. You go to Brazil, of course, there's the most significant community in Brazil. But the question of the mind is what we're talking about. If we can move that Brazilian mind with the spirit of Zumbi and all, I've been up into the mountains where we went with the spirit of Zumbi. I've been up into the mountains where the spirit of Dessalines on those mountains were there, and they dragged factories up and built their boundaries in the mountains so they could resist. And so powerful that the Europeans had to leave a mark on the Haitians that we're going to stop you and stain you with, but they have not. The spirit of Zumbi, the spirit of Toussaint, and the spirit of Dessalines is still there. The spirit of the Maroons is still there. The spirit of us who went in the backwoods of Georgia and survived. The Spirit has went through Virginia, and the black men armed in the wars. We can claim reparations just by how many of our deaths were in the battle. America couldn't have won any of the battles that they had. They couldn't even won the independence of the United States without us needing us. They couldn't have won the Civil War. We have to say we have paid our dues, and this is the plan we have stretched over the next 50 years. And we want the support that we can get. If you can't support us, step aside until you grow into consciousness. And we don't need anybody's wealth. We are the most wealthy people in the world. We are the most wealthy people in the world, but it's the use of the wealth. Training youngsters, we were trained how to use, as youngsters growing up, how to use the money. We were trained how to walk the talk. You need that African village. You don't need that TV, that other monstrosity technology that we have. We need to look at our history and then take Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben. Understand that those were two brothers different, one coming from the South and one coming from Ethiopia. But they forged, they handled their conflicts. They knew they had to pass it down to us. Nobody has that story. George Washington ain't got it. Thomas Jefferson ain't got it. Benjamin Franklin ain't got it. The struggle against the odds and understanding that you have to get rid of that European mind and spirit. That's what the girls, that's what our sisters, because it's the women that put that raised the people. Of course, our people had men's groups, and we need to study this African culture, get into it, and make it a part of who and what we are. Goodness gracious! Hey,
Dr. Jeffries, yeah,
thank you very much, Madasi
yeah.
P. Madasi.
Okay, Madasi. Hold on, wait a minute, Papa Kai. Brother Sabello, wait a minute, Papa Kai. Brother Sabello, finally, how do you see the movement in the near future in terms of reparations, and especially of the African continent? Did you see a movement of reparations coming forth? Coming forth, leading reparation movement on the continent.
I see us making some serious advances, but that aspect of advances will have to be premised upon a clear understanding that we recontextualize our understanding of who we are, in the sense that one of the things that bedevils the nation on a global basis is what I will refer to as tribalism, which is manifested at different levels, in the sense that we take ethnicity and we break each other up according to our ethnic identities. But there is also tribalism from a perspective where organizationally we are failing to identify our oneness as African people. Once we can get over the idea of organizational identity and realize that we are actually part of a collective whole and everyone is playing their own little bit in taking us forward, that is what is going to help. If over the next 10 years or whatever, we are able to get over that particular aspect of wanting to be the organization that does it for everyone and the individual that basically speaks for everyone, but realize that within my own little space, I have my own relevance and I am contributing to the greater whole. And understanding that when we say umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu, we also say abantu ngabantu ngomuntu, which basically means I am because we are because I am. For as long as I am not part of the whole, there is something missing. And if I'm not part of the, there's something missing in me as much as the whole has something missing if I am not there. So we basically understand the relevance of the us to I and I to us. And then from there, we are able to proceed. If we can get to that particular aspect, I do believe that we will be the nation that we were designed to be. And I see a situation, even with what is going on right now, where the salvation of humanity is in Africa. The salvation of humanity, in as far as this COVID thing going on and this new world order, blah, 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 Africa is going to come up with the solution to all this that is going on. And we basically are sitting on the wealth of the world in as far as the resources are concerned, in as far as the arable land is concerned. So the idea is how do we bring this all together? And partly it is informed by our ability to have a nationwide educational curriculum. Because we speak right now, on the continent, the curricula that we are exposed to is dependent on what colonizer left us with, regardless of how many years so-called independence. But if we can have a structure where basically our academics help us to formulate and develop a curriculum that speaks to all of us. I know Dr. Chinweizu has been working for years on developing something, and it's necessary to basically feed into that. At the same time, we also need to start looking at the legal systems across Africa. We need to realize that these systems that we have, which were basically imposed upon us, are not the common law of our Africanness. If we can begin to revisit what the common law is, and we have our laws basically leading us as to how we live as African people, and also have a curriculum that speaks to the generality of who we are, and also our spirituality as African people, then I honestly believe that 10 years might even be a very long time for us to make the mark that we need to mark as a nation. Thank you very much.
Very good.
Okay,
Excellent.
I must say now, us, Brother Washi is here to continue the program. So I'd like to thank turn Dr. Jeffries, Professor. Yes,
Yes,
well, we're out of time completely.
yes, but we control the time. Just give me 2 minutes. I want to go back to the story that Brother Elder Jeffries raised. And when I began, I said greetings, family. And I stressed the word family was not polite conversation. It had meaning and it had substance. Because Brother Tashaka sitting there, our relationship goes back over 45 years. We met in Dar es Salaam as two Pan-African organizations, the Pan-African People's Organization, the Shaka, the PACM. We organized, we worked together, and Papa was able to have their organization in America, jump on a plane, and to join African Liberation Day in England. And that went on for many years. That is cooperation. That is the wealth that we have built over the years. And come back to the point raised by Elder Jeffries. I was in the States. There was the State of the Black Race Conference in Atlanta. And we went to a place in Georgia where the what these people call that built this great pyramid. And because Professor Jeffries was known to these people, when he turned up at the door, they said, "Oh, Professor Jeffries, just go straight in." I would go right in. And I was there, believe me. When you see the artifacts that was inside those pyramids, you couldn't tell if there wasn't the original out of Kemet. And when you walk along the canal, the tranquility of the flow of the water, or people create Africa and Babylon, and that was destroyed. And it was destroyed because of the fear of the African presence. And he took us to his ancestral homeland. And there was a one-room schoolhouse in time of chattel slavery. That was his parents' ancestral home. And when I look underneath the cellar and how the building was built and slabs of stone, I couldn't work out how the hell a building sit perfectly with storm and it didn't fall down. I couldn't believe it. That's African architecture that we need to revive. And in closing, let me say this. Draco, as Shaka knows very well, came from Azania and stayed with us for quite some time in England. And he teaches us a few things about our culture. He said, when there was a feast happening in Africa, you have to put the food for the thief. Because if you didn't put the food for the thief, you'll feel so insulted. They'll create problem. Now, can you imagine? These riffraffs, these undesirable. But they said, although we are riffraffs and we undesirable, we're part of this community and we must be respected. Now, what kind of culture respective? African culture, it goes deep. And I'll close on this one because time is running. I heard a story that a child at birth was given a song, and that song lived with that child until he goes in the ground. And when that child becomes a man, a woman, and did something terrible, they would sing the song to that child and said, Sabelo, I know Sabelo is a good man, I'm just using an African name. Why do you do that horrible thing? And Sabelo would start to cry. Nobody put him in prison, nobody cut off his neck, and he was rehabilitated. But that is not the full story. I've heard the full story. And the full story is when a man and a woman want to have a child, they get together and they create a song. And they sing the song to the child in the woman's stomach. And that child knows the song. Our culture, brothers and sisters, is as deep as time itself. Let us resurrect it. Let us live. Because the best way to fight an alien culture is to live your own. Rise up, African. Do our business.
Ashe, Ashe.
Ashe, brother Pepe. That's a nice way to round up. Very, very nice. So again, on behalf of the African Congress movement, I would like to thank Dr. Jeffries for your to grace us with your presence. Also, Dr. Obadi Shaka, the relationship with PACM, you have been with us from the very beginning. I also thank Brother Jelani for, time out if you're busy schedule to be. I'd like to thank you. I also thank Sabelo. As Clinton said, every time we call on him, he's ready to move. And I'd like to thank Professor Chakali. I did say the last time we went to start off something great. We will be doing many, many things together. And Sister Tayo, it's a pleasure to meet you. I can see where you get your good looks from. Your mother, Thank you for your participation today. So
Taro is a
so
twin.
now I like,
Yeah, she's a twin.
yeah,
Yeah, two of them.
I like
My twin is
to hand you over to Brother Washington. Brother Washi. That's
Okay.
yep. Brother Washi.
Yes, I am on here. I can hear you. I'm saying that
Okay.
this discussion on reparation has spoken for itself. So many aspects of the African pledge came out in this discussion to honor our culture, our ancestors, to reconnect to the homeland, to make sure that we are moving in one direction as a people and also to have that hope that we will win. Brother Papakai charge has left us on a note whereby there is one simple message: the culture, it lies in the culture. Panel, moderator, it has been a long discussion, but it worked every minute. And I hope those who are still with us have been able to be re-energized around reparations, not only about reparations, but about the road to liberate ourselves through our culture. It's all in the culture. And I want to continue to acknowledge those scholars who have joined this panel and continue to support the movement. I know we are in different time frame depending on where you are, but we are blessed to have you. And it is our heartfelt thank you again for this discussion. We want to continue the program which we have.
Yeah, and finally, just before you go, Wash, I forgot to say, Brother Glenroy fortunately dropped out earlier, but again, he's a stalwart. He's somebody we're very close with. Global African Congress. So, Brother Glenroy, if you're listening, thank you very much for participating. And I hand you back now to Washi.
Yeah.